Welcome to this edition of On Point. I am joined by Ram Madhav, member of the National Executive of RSS and also member of the Board of Governors of the India Foundation. So thank you very much for making time for this edition of On Point. And let me begin this interview by asking you, can we say that with AUKUS, militarization of Indo-Pacific is now a reality?
In a way, yes. The AUKUS alliance is a military alliance, and the countries involved in it are very clear that the alliance is created in view of the evolving situation in the Indo-Pacific. I would go one step forward and say that this can be described in reality as the Asian NATO. Because when Quad was created, some analysts started calling it as Asian NATO, which it was not. Because countries like India, Japan, they never looked at Quad as any military or defense alliance. We view Quad as an arrangement for non-military objectives like trade, civilian relationships in healthcare, pandemics, ecological issues, environmental issues and all that. Probably because countries like India and Japan are not forthcoming in converting Quad into a military alliance. Probably the Americans felt the need for creating another alliance because this whole AUKUS thing happened so suddenly that even President of France had to react very strongly to it. He had no inkling of its coming. Having said it, I still have my own doubts about it because, of course, America has a very, very powerful navy. Nobody denies that. But the British Navy is dilapidated. It's old time. Their frigate, their warship, they are all very old. Half of them are non-functional. They are under repair. So how much value addition happens with UK in the alliance, I really don't know. Australia is a fledgling power. Australia needs the support of US and UK to build a strong navy. But it looks like the objective is to probably play a proactive role in the Indo-Pacific.
So tell me, then what is the way forward for the Indian diplomacy? Because we have some historical positions when it comes to military alliances, when it comes to military alliances even in our neighborhood.
We do military exercises with many countries. But traditionally we have been averse to having military alliances, not today, but right from the beginning, right from the time of our independence. So, but the fact remains that whatever new Cold War-like situation is evolving, it is evolving in our neighborhood. We cannot simply wish it away. The last time when the Cold War happened, it happened largely in Western Europe and in America. Between Eastern Europe, Western Europe and America, it was largely a European and American phenomena, starting from USSR to America. But this time it is happening in our own neighborhood, in the Indo-Pacific, where we have huge interests. I feel that India is at a very important intersection of the two blocks that are emerging very fast. One block is the Eurasian bloc, where the American influence is clearly on the wane. It is, decreasing. It is, America is practically absent in Eurasia today. After its withdrawal from Afghanistan, the Eurasia has come completely under the spell of China and Russia. So that Eurasian bloc on one side and the Indo-Pacific, where US definitely has bigger presence, it has bigger partners like from Japan to Australia, it has many friends there. So India is in between these two regions of Cold War, and this Cold War is going to be largely fought in the Indo-Pacific region. So India has to obviously play a very cautious role. I believe that the two benchmarks that we had set for ourselves at the time of our independence, namely Asian centrality, we believe that our main area of priority is our neighborhood. Number two, strategic autonomy. We must maintain our autonomy, while of course we stand with the democratic forces, we stand with the forces of rule of law, stand with the forces of peace, stand with forces of democracy. But at the same time, we also maintain certain amount of strategic autonomy. I think that is the very difficult kind of role that India has to play at this juncture.
But then a lot of people are, are of the view that since, America has created AUKUS within a Quad, Quad does not have a secretariat, Quad does not have a charter, it might end up as a, as a talk shop. There is a fear that it will not deliver what it is supposed to be, because even the Quad, when it started, Australia and India were very reticent, they were even afraid to use the word Quad. And now the Quad got resurrected after 2017. So if we see the life cycle of this word, then it has seen its ups and downs and the reticence within the Indian diplomatic circle.
AUKUS and Quad are two different arrangements. AUKUS is a very clear defense alliance, military alliance. It has certain immediate objectives which it wants to achieve. For example, one of the most important priorities for AUKUS is to strengthen Australia's naval capability. Towards that end, they are supplying nuclear-powered submarines to Australia, and Australia is building new docks in its south, probably for the use of AUKUS partners. We do not know, but definitely there is a definite priority set for AUKUS. Whereas Quad is a non-militaristic arrangement where we are working together on very important issues like pandemic control, environmental climate change issues, trade issues, supply chain issues. For example, on the vaccines, we used the Quad supply chain strength to manufacture, distribute the vaccines.
Okay, understand this, the point you're making, but the fact that you yourself admitted that the Cold War has arrived on the Indian border, and you use the word Asian centrality and the strategic autonomy, how does it play for India? Because we can't wish away China, we can't wish away Pakistan, which is the new axis, we can't wish away a very neutral Russia, which has become close to China, and then we have a very long distant friend, United States of America. So in the compelling circumstances, how does strategic autonomy play out then?
This idea of strategic autonomy is very much the present proposition of the Indian government. The Indian foreign policy establishment believes in upholding strategic autonomy because in the two evolving blocks in the world today, whether it is Eurasia or it is Indo-Pacific, India has very strong interests on both sides. For example, from the Eurasian side, especially in our immediate neighborhood in the northwestern side, we have challenges like terrorism. We have serious issues with situation in Pakistan, in Afghanistan, in some of the other regions in the Middle East. There, we need the support of countries like Russia and others. Plus, India traditionally has been having close ties with countries like Iran. They are traditionally India's neighborhood friends. Russia, we have very strong defense ties. So, India has its interest, varied interests in Eurasian region, which India wants to obviously continue to maintain. At the same time, Indo-Pacific has emerged as the lifeline for us. 70% of our trade today happens through Indo-Pacific. So, we have interests on both sides. That's why I said a difficult balancing we have to do.
The world is divided into two visions. Now, one vision is which says that human rights through democracy, and the other vision is human rights through development. Where should India stand?
These two expressions were from the UN General Assembly speeches of President Biden and President Xi Jinping. President Biden, who delivered the first speech of the 76th session of the UNGA, underscored that democracies need to be strengthened in order for the human rights of the people to be protected. To which Xi Jinping responded in his speech that no, this whole talk about democracy is a meaningless talk, useless talk, this is all duplicity, double standards. What China will promise is human rights through development. I see this argument of human rights to development is a very deceitful argument. If human rights can happen through development, India need not have fought for British to leave India. British were giving good development to India. They were building roads, they were building railway lines. Democracy is critical to the human rights of the people. It's only in democracies that people have a right to freedom to express, freedom of conscience, many other freedoms that they get, which authoritarian regimes like China do not give. They probably give development, but the development that one accrues through such human rights that they accrue through such developmental activities are very restricted. We want real freedoms that people enjoy under democracies.
Okay. Coming back to this issue, I would like to know, why is AUKUS investing so much on the northern Australian coast when Americans already have a very big military naval base in Japan from 1940s?
Look, Indo-Pacific extends from, if you take Asia-Pacific region, it extends from Japan to Australia. Japan, of course, always has a base of Americans there in Okinawa of the Japanese coast, but Americans do not have any such major facility in south of the Pacific Ocean, or probably south of the Indian Ocean. Now they probably found Australia as a useful place to have their certain facilities developed there. More importantly, the Okinawa base, in their own terminology, in their own American military terminology, is described as a wasted asset, because the Chinese have developed enough capability to neutralize any activity from the Okinawa base using their long-range missiles and other technological advancements that the Chinese military has achieved over the last few decades. They are able to practically turn Okinawa into a useless place, which is generally called as wasted asset.
So in this case, do you think that will AUKUS be able to save Taiwan? Because there are studies by American generals saying that in 6 to 7 years, China will have the full potential to invade Taiwan.
One region or one country that is definitely giving sleepless nights to many strategic experts in America and elsewhere is what is going to happen to Taiwan. Many, including somebody as senior as Philip Davidson, who was the commander-in-chief of America's Indo-Pacific Command, he had openly said that it is not more than in next 5-6 years, China would definitely occupy or take over Taiwan. So that certainly is a major concern for many of these countries. I would see the entire AUKUS initiative as something motivated by this fear, this concern about what will happen in the Taiwan Straits. Will China undertake a military adventure? In that scenario, will it also target Australia? Because Australia is one country which is expected to join America in controlling or containing China.
And coming back to the last question, because ultimately when we talk about Indo-Pacific, it's also about ASEAN. It's about countries close to us. It's also look east and act east policy. ASEAN nations are feeling the heat of this new emerging Cold War from both ends. What should India be doing?
Prime Minister Modi has openly acknowledged repeatedly, not once but on several occasions, that we look at ASEAN as the pivot of Indo-Pacific. ASEAN's centrality to Indo-Pacific has always been upheld, acknowledged by India. We see ASEAN as an important partner for India when it comes to ensuring peace, inclusivity, stability, and freedom of movement, freedom of trade, freedom of overflights. We need ASEAN on our side and ASEAN needs us on their side. Today, countries in ASEAN which usually always maintain neutrality are also coming under tremendous pressure. In such a scenario, India certainly needs to stand firmly with the ASEAN group of countries, and together
Asian centrality?
we must work together. See, that is what I meant when I said Asian centrality. Right in 1947 itself, even before India became independent, Jawaharlal Nehru had hosted Asian Nations Conference in Delhi. This was March 1947. That time he mobilized leaders from all these countries. Malaya at that time, there was no Malaysia, Singapore separately, Malaya, and many of these countries, there were representatives from 28 countries. So we decided that we all have to work together in order for this region to remain peaceful, in order for this region not to become a playground of a new Cold War. So I think for India, that should be an important priority, that while maintaining strategic autonomy is one important pillar, maintaining good neighborhood relations with, first of all, its own neighbors, then the extended neighborhood of ASEAN. This should be India's priority.
So thank you very much for making time for News 9.
Thank you. My pleasure.
On point. Thank you.